10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second part of our Round 5 podcast. This in this little segment, Nathan Banksy Banks and I, Jay Moneyball Hellaby, will be dealing with avoiding trade rage and the importance of consistency when playing the overall game. And, of course, consistency can be a very important factor when playing head-to-head against your mates. And those of you in the Mentors group, or if you're unfortunate enough to be banging up against those Renegades boys, no doubt you want to be beating them week in, week out as well. Banksy, once again, welcome. It's Wednesday. We don't have football till Friday. I'm kind of missing Thursday footy, mate. What about you?
No, I wasn't a big fan of Thursday footy. That's just because of my living arrangements with my parents and whatnot. I don't get the TV hardly at all, so I hardly get to see any games until the weekend, so it sucks.
Mate, just in the interest of helping you get laid in the future, you know, I know it's only a small-time radio podcast show, but you're kind of getting a little bit of minor celebrity status. Don't admit to living with mum and dad. Paints a picture of a basement. Right. Okay, no worries. They're riding on the sun's coattails. I get it. I understand entirely, mate. Fully on board there. All right.
I gave him control of the TV.
Oh, aren't you generous? What a good boy. What a good son. Look, yeah, we'll just completely skip past that awkward silence there that everyone's going, what awkward silence, because I very cleverly edited it out afterwards in post-production. Let's get into some trade rage. Mate, the forums have been going nuts. People are dumping Sandow like he is a sack of stinky manure that's been sitting out in the sun for 3 days. What's going on? How do we avoid this emotional reaction to a bad score, to one bad game?
First of all, you got to realise, why did you bring Sandow into your team for? Yeah, I'm guessing most people would have traded Sandow into your team, because unless you were very lucky and picked them up right from the start. So you traded them into your team because you wanted to make the money and score some decent points. Now, you obviously had a long-term plan and a short-term plan with them. I'm guessing a lot of you guys will have produced a long-term, he's going to score 50-plus points each week for me and become a 450k player by about the rise, and that's when you can look at buying Daddy Tree Evans, who will be probably the top scorer over the Origin period. But with this -4, you have to realise that he is an up-and-down player, and going into him, you would know that he is an up-and-down player. He can score you 70, he can score you 20. Now, you didn't think that the lows were going to be this low, and that's why there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions that he's been dropped. Remember, last year he still averaged 35 points in a losing Eels side, so he does have that in his favour, in my opinion. So if you have him, look at holding on to him for another few more weeks, because he will score you another 40, 50 points. He's got the Sharks at home, he's got the Titans away, Panthers and Cowboys at home, and then the Broncos at home, the Dragons away. So he's got a pretty nice, easy draw apart from those two next games. So, but like, even against those guys, he loves playing.
Oh, look, it's a local derby against the Sharks down there, and of course, as Ricky Stewart's added a little bit of heat to the fire, I guess you'd say. Coming out today, it's on NRL.com, and I've linked it in Mentors. Paul Gallen said he will walk down the Cronulla Kingsway nude if the Eels beat the Sharks this round. Now, Chrissy Sandow, he's a bit of a joker, he's a bit of a larrikin. I reckon if anything's ever going to bring out the absolute best in Chrissy Sandow, I think it is the chance to make Gal walk naked in public as a result of the Eels beating the Sharks. So I think we'll see a big bounce-back game from Chrissy Sandow. But it's interesting the things you've just said there, Nate. You've mentioned, why did you bring him in? What was your long-term plan? He is going to be up and down, and all these sorts of things that we knew. It's a very logical, rational approach. It's sort of pulling the mind back to where you were when you made the decision to bring him in, which is at complete odds with trade rage. I mean, I know, like you and I, we've had the discussions. We see these terrible, dismal scores, and we just lose it. You know, we want to dump that guy. We want to punish him, and of course, he's got no freaking idea what's going on in the world of Dream Team. I mean, as far as he's concerned, he's out there playing football, and we're sitting in our parents' basements. No offense, Banksy. I mean, in our basements that our parents live above, and playing Dream Team like little speckled geeks. You know, what you're saying there, to avoid that trade rage, are you trying to say get back to the logic, get back to the rational, get back to the maths, and get back to that information that you know about the player, you know, the research that you did at the time that you made the decision to bring him in?
Yeah, that is correct. You've got to make sure you have what did you bring him in for? You must have had a long-term plan, or if it was a short-term cash grab, then it maybe is time to jump off him. But you also got to watch out what else is going on in your team. Like, does, say, Jamie Brewer, Mitchell Orbison, also probably brought on in a whim in Orbison's case, just like Gidley probably was, that why did you bring them in? A quick buck or a consistent scorer? And is one bad game going to throw you off? There's no doubt Sando's going to score good next week. He's going to probably score 40, 50 points, I'm guessing. But the week after, he might only score 30. And then he might go score 60 for you. And he's probably back at the price he was last round before he got the -4 again. I'm just guessing. I don't have numbers exactly in front of me.
Well, and that's an absolutely fair comment. And let's not forget that, you know, when the Eels do click, they can pile on the points. We saw what they did to the Warriors. You know, Ricky Stewart's come out and he has said there are some issues at the Eels. They are going to cop a few thrashings and that sort of thing. You know, they're good games. Is it going to be enough? Is Sandow going to score enough in their good games to make it worth keeping them through the bad games? Is he going to score enough in the bad games, you know, to make it worth keeping him? And considering that what happened this last weekend, you know, they put him out to defend on the wing for the first time. There were a lot of changes that went on in that Eels side in positioning. Is his -4 really a reflection of what we can expect from his average bad game? Or is it just the perfect storm, all the nasty stars aligned to mess with the Dream Team coaches that had him?
I'm guessing, looking at his points in front of me now, and his breakdown of his points, it was that perfect storm. It was being forced to defend on a wing against some of the biggest and strongest guys in the league in the Roosters team. He made 9 tackles, he missed 7 of them. He normally makes roughly 9 tackles, he only misses about 3 or 4 of them. But what made him score so low was he had no attacking points. He made 1 metre. He kicked 66. He made 1 point in meters gained. He made 6 points in kick meters. He had nothing else. When he scored a 68, he scored a try, kicked 6 goals, had a try assist, had 2 line breaks. He had 5 tackle busts. He also had 90 meters gained. He had 160 kick meters, 320 kick meters as well. He was dominant. He was the main go-to guy. Even if the Eels don't click and Sando clicks, he can do individual brilliance against the player and score a 20, 30-point play, jumping through the line, busting a tackle or 2, and scoring a try. There's 20, 30 points. That could mean the difference between a good and a bad game. And that probably was the key on Roosters against the Roosters. He didn't have that chance to impact.
I think a lot of the time he was definitely out of position, but just interesting, you know, he scored that 60-point game, 68-point game against the Warriors, and scored a try, plenty of kick meters, plenty of tackle busts, and that sort of thing. And it was against the Warriors. The Eels won that game. But interestingly, you know, they went up against the Bulldogs, and they only just missed out on a win there. And look, they were pretty lackluster against the Tigers. So these are 2 games the Eels have won, and Sandow scored a 51 and a 50. He's still the main go-to guy. It just happened that against the Roosters, you know, the perfect storm all clicked in, and Sandow ended up with a pretty dismal score. You know, a lot of the coaches are jumping off him this week, and he's got a break even of 71. So, you know, he lost 21 grand or thereabouts, 17,000 it was. So I can sort of understand in that regard. But, you know, I still think Chris Sandow has a lot to offer the Dream Team, and perhaps instead of raging and feeling all hurt and emotional about it, look, we all get attached to our players. I mean, I'm sitting here with William Zillman still in my wing fullback position after 3 pissant scores. You know, maybe take a deep breath and look at those rational and logical reasons. And another player, Banksy, that we should really discuss while talking about trade rage and making rational and logical decisions as to whether we keep or whether we hold or jump off the bus, it's got to be Kurt Gidley.
Yeah, Kurt Gidley is another option, but he's slightly different to Sandow in a respect where I think a lot of coaches had Gidley from the start because everybody saw the value in Gidley. So you haven't used a trade on him yet. You're probably used to trade on Sandow, so maybe you can be a bit more forgiving, so to speak, on Gidley and trade him out to, say, Humble, who is coming up and being a great cash cow potential.
Well, I think the other side of that too. I mean, Humble looks the goods as far as a cash cow goes, but with Gidley, we've had 2 injury scares in 2 weeks. He knocked himself out attempting a tackle last week. The week before that, he did something to his calf muscle in training. Gidley is the original man of glass, and even more so than I think any other player we've seen in the history of Dreamteam. He's certainly starting to challenge for that record if he doesn't already hold it. Gidley, in my book, is a good reason to trade. The worries and the negatives, the dark cloud that seems to surround this bloke who is, by all means, he is a fantastic scorer when he's fit, when he's healthy, when he stays fit and stays healthy. But he is a liability. Injury-wise, he is an absolute liability, as he has been probably the last 2.5 years. So in that regard, that's a logical, rational reason to trade him out. It's very much is the juice worth the squeeze proposition. You weigh up the risk of Gidley not playing a full game again because he gets injured again and he's out for an extended period of time, or he's just out for a couple of weeks, versus the potential points that he could score. Starting at hooker, he could be a 40 or 50-point player or even more. That is a good way to look at a potential trade rather than go the trade rage route, which a lot of people are going with Sandow. There is a fair bit of worry associated with the Gidley proposition. Is he going to get injured again? Is he going to play games this season? And I can tell you with a fair bit of confidence that he's probably going to get injured this week. And then next week when I trade him out, he'll come good and he'll play the rest of the season because I won't have him in my side. So, if you guys want to hold him for an extra couple of weeks and test that theory, by all means, you're welcome to. And I guess it's another factor to think about in regards to what you do with Kurt Gidley.
Yeah, that is definitely true. I personally stay away from Gidley due to due to injury concerns at the start of the season. Even at hooker, I think with Badderis on the bench at hooker, he isn't going to be the Cameron Smith that we're going to see, the Robbie Farah. Kurt Gidley has had no try assists this year, no line break assist, none of that sort of stuff. He has had a couple of offloads, he's had up tackle break, he's made a few kick meters and a few runs too, so he's not doing too much work. Defensive-wise, he's been a bit up and down, but that's because he's played in the halves and he's played injured and whatnot. So
yeah.
If you trade him out, he's probably one.
He's probably one of the wise ones to trade, and of course, trading to Tom Humble is one of the most popular trades this week. In fact, the Gidley to Tom Humble trade accounts for 50% of the trades to Tom Humble this week. The other 50% is Jacob Miller to Tom Humble. So, Tom Humble, to give you guys an idea of what's been happening with him, at the beginning of the week, I checked in and it was about 2.06% of teams that actually owned Tom Humble. And right now, looking at the stats in front of me, 5.26% of teams own Tom Humble. So still a reasonably good point of difference, but his ownership has more than doubled in literally 2 days.
That is definitely true. Like, he is going to be the one that everybody's going to jump on. He's going to be at wing fullback and half. If you got a failing wing fullback, Wes Naguama, Jiro Bill, and you want to jump off them, he's there to get on. If you want to upgrade one of your nuffies, say you might have had Kyle Felt down there, you want to get rid of Drury Lowe, you can jump on Humble. If you've got Miller, you can jump on Humble. If you want to get rid of Drinkwater, which I don't suggest doing, you can get Humble in. He's got so many options you can bring him in. You can bring him in as a non-playing reserve for depth and for pure cash reasons, or you can play him and risk that points.
Absolutely, and I mean the thing on Tom Humble, and if you are trade raging, you know, if Banksy and I can make a recommendation, I would have to say, look, a Gidley to Humble trade or a Sandow to Humble trade is a trade rage trade that's not going to hurt you as much as, say, some others potentially could. Speaking of my Orbison trade a little bit earlier on in the year, but, you know, we won't go into too much detail on that. Humble is due to make $30,000 this, you know, this week. His break-even is negative 25. He's projected to make a score of 21 against the Cowboys. If he makes 21, he's going to make $30,200. I'm predicting that against the Cowboys, we're going to see a 35 to 40 point score from Tom Humble. Particularly with Blake Austin in the halves, I think Tom Humble may take a little bit more of a dominant role. Not super dominant, you know, not like a JT to Michael Morgan or a Benji Marshall to Jacob Miller style role, but he will probably be the little bit more dominant half and, you know, be doing a fair bit of the kicking and playmaking there. So I think Tom Humble is a very good buy. Whether you bring him into your half or, as Banksy said, your wing fullback position, I think that's a fairly good move. Banksy?
Yeah, that is. I actually think he's got the Humble Austin combination is going to be similar to a Caesar Kelly combination at the Cowboys at the Titans.
Yeah.
But I'm going to think that Austin is going to be stronger than Kelly. That's just my personal opinion. I really rate Austin as a young kid. I remember him about 2 years ago in the under-20s, absolutely single-handedly destroying the under-20 Sharks, and it was so demoralising. Because one of my mates was playing for the Sharks at that time, so I was like, oh, crap.
Well, it's interesting.
So
that you like him. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Gus Gould's got huge raps on him, but it's interesting that you liken him to more of an Albert Kelly-style player. I actually see Tom Humble as more the Albert Kelly-style player, the little guy who's willing to take on the line and get a bit creative, whereas I see Austin as the bigger, stronger half, kind of like Caesar in a lot of ways, who's willing to take on the line and take the hit or run to the line and get that short pass off, or just run to the line and run straight through it. Kind of like the old Brad Fittler of old in you know, that period between the 70th and 80th minute mark where he'd actually do something in a game.
Well, that's where he got his points from.
Yeah, well, that's it. Brad Fittler, 10-minute Freddy. Gotta love him. All right, moving along. So, you know, there are any other, I guess, key points for trade rages out there this week? Obviously, the reverse button is a great invention because it does let you sort of make those trades, reverse them, and make a few more trades and really test some things out.
That has been a vital inclusion over the last year and a half of Dreamteam.
Yeah.
I would recommend, if you do have nobody involved, and if your trades don't have anyone involved in a Friday night game or a Saturday night game, don't trade on the Friday night. Reverse the trade, leave it alone, and then do it on the day because you might get a late putter and you might have to rethink your trades, which does mean you're limited in who you can get, but at least you can get in somebody playing or somebody of equal or slightly lesser value if you must get rid of that player that week, or wait a week and see what happens.
Yeah, good tip. Definitely good
Usually
tip for teams without depth.
That is a good tip, especially for head-to-head teams, I think.
Yeah.
I used it myself last weekend.
And it's
mainly because
interesting.
I was good.
Sorry, Banksy.
No, I used that tactic last weekend because I knew I didn't have much time on a Thursday, so I did my Brenton Lynch trade, and then I had another trade to use, and I used it on the Friday afternoon because I got an odd Vital tie.
Yep.
Because I was trading out. I think I was trading out some player that played on the Friday. I think it was a Bulldogs player or something, and I had to get rid of them.
No, fair enough.
Locked out.
Fair enough. And actually interesting, just on the way to use the rolling lockout to your advantage, one of the things, and particularly this week, it potentially works very well with most people having Cameron Smith or Robbie Farah as their captain, being that Melbourne play the Tigers on Monday night. I had it explained to me this week, there's the Captain Rort strategy, as it has been described to me. And what it is you select Cameron Smith as your captain, and then you go and you select one of your other players as your vice captain. And this particular player you select as your vice captain is one that you suspect may have a really big score. You know, like a Sean Fensom, or if you're a bit of a gambler, maybe you'd look at an outside back, you know, like a Michael Gordon or a William Zillman, or someone who's got that capability, maybe even Daly Cherry Evans, to really pump out an 80, 90, 100. Yeah, Greg Inglis is another good example. And you select them as your vice captain. Now, what you do, particularly when your vice captain is playing before your actual captain, is you wait to see what happens with your vice captain's score. Now, if he does go gangbusters and scores an 80, 90, 100, whatever, and you don't think Cameron Smith or Robbie Farrell or your captain, whoever that may be, is going to match that score, you uncaptain your captain and then go and bring in a non-scoring player, so someone who's not playing that week, for the weakest player in your squad. So, for example, okay, this week I've got Cameron Smith as my captain, and I've selected Will Zillman as my vice-captain, for argument's sake. Now, Will Zillman, we know he's been underperforming, but we also know he's capable of pumping out 100 points plus if he gets a roll-on. So, let's say, hypothetically speaking, Will Zillman scores 83 this week. And I'm going, Cam Smith isn't going to get 83 against the Tigers. In fact, he may even get rested in the last 20 minutes. So I uncaptain Cameron Smith. Now, I would then sub out Daniel Tupou for Anthony Don, who is not selected to play at all, which would...
You can't do that.
Sorry, wouldn't do it for Anthony Don.
I'm sorry, you can't do that.
No, can't do it for Anthony Don because he will have played with Will Zillman. But sub out the play, one of the players that are not playing, have not played as yet, that's a low-ranking player for an NPR, someone who is not going to be playing. So in this case, it would be Daniel Tupou for, say, actually I can't do Daniel Tupou, so say Lewis Brown for Michael Cheekham. Okay? For argument's sake, assuming that...
It works.
Banksy, quit telling me I can't do it. I'm trying to present an example here. And this example's gone to shit. So let's just say it this way, okay? I've uncaptained Cameron Smith. William Zillman has scored 83 points. I have a player who has not played yet in my wing fullback position who's probably not going to score very much. I sub him out for another player in my wing fullback position who will not be playing at all, and his team hasn't played yet. So I automatically engage the auto emergency in my squad. And then I captain him. So I captain the player who is not going to be playing in his team that I've just moved into my side. And as a result, my vice captain automatically becomes my captain. So William Zillman gets the double points for his 83 or whatever. I still get Cameron Smith's points as a one-off because he's still in my squad. I've just uncaptained him and captained a guy who's not playing at all. I hope that makes sense after Banksy's various interruptions in my hypothetical example. I'm willing to bet everybody's confused now, Banksy, and they're going to think I'm a raving lunatic, which is not far from the truth.
Don't blame me.
Yeah, we'll all blame you.
Blame Banks. Blame Banks.
If you're still with us,
comment on that.
Go for it.
Can I make a comment? If you're going to do that, and say Zillman gets 80 points, he gets 160 points as a captain, you take off Cameron Smith and say Cameron Smith gets 65 points. So you have 225 points sitting there. You could have had Cameron Smith 65, which is 130, and that 80, which makes 210. Is that extra 15 points going to be made up in that auto emergency? Because say you might remove Tupou, and you might only score 20, but you might get an auto emergency from, say, a late call up Nathan Smith, and he might score 8 points again. You've kind of negated all those points.
And look, that's definitely something to consider, and fair point. Fair point.
Something that could actually come into your hand later. Something that could come into your hand later and head-to-head if you're trying to look for a risk. That you need risk, you need double points because you're behind this player, and you're not going to beat him unless you have one of your abstract point of difference players guns it. You can use this rule and take that punt on it.
Yeah. And look, it is something that I would caution you to use wisely, because there are risks with it. There are risks, but if you do want to use the role in Captain Rort, that's the way to do it.
That is correct.
All right, Banksy, let's move along, mate. Let's have a quick chat about consistency. We have rabbited on for a little while already here, and that's of course par for the course with us. We can't seem to shut up. But consistency, how important is consistency this year in both overall and head-to-head competitions?
I personally rate consistency, especially with my forwards and halves, one of the most vital pieces of picking the player. I don't like seeing my forwards and halves going up and down, yo-yoing, hence why I didn't get Sando a few weeks ago. I got Caesar instead. I've been very pleased with Caesar so far in the selection of my team. I like players going up and down. I also like those consistent centres as well. So I like the McQueens, your Tios, your Mannerings, and your centres, your second rows. I like doing that sort of stuff, and then having those risque, high up and down sort of players in the wing fullback, and maybe a centre too.
Yeah. Look, I very much agree with you there, and particularly in the centres. You know, I like to use my second row forwards in the dual position in the centres. I like to know that I can count on them to pump out, you know, a score that's within a sort of 10-point range, you know, as far as their average goes, and let the wing fullbacks be the mavericks, I guess, of my side. I think consistency is going to be huge, and I'm going to give a little example here that, look, it is a personal example. There is a little bit of gloating going on because, you know, I'm now ranked higher than I've ever been ranked in 3 years of playing Dreamteam. I built my side for consistency this year, figuring that, you know, with the changes last year, one of the lessons I learned is that as much as your attacking players are scoring, you know, some really big points at times, they're not consistent, and you need to have those consistent players who are going to churn out a reliable score week in, week out. And as a result, after 4 rounds, my round scores have been 753, 700, 752, 752. So 3 out of 4 ain't bad, and the 4th one that dropped down to 700 is not too bad. But interestingly, I'm now ranked at number 907. First time I've ever been in the top 1,000. I gained 1,000 points last week in a week that was very up and down for a lot of coaches. You know, the guy who won the cash prize last week, the week before, was ranked 46,000th in something. And he went from 46,000th to first. You look at his squad, and you wonder what on God's green earth he was thinking to pick that squad. He got lucky. And a lot of that is going to be happening, particularly in the early parts of the season. I think consistently pumping out that 750, 800, 850, and just slowly increasing your average as much as you can is going to definitely benefit you in overall. And, of course, anything that benefits you overall generally is going to benefit you in head-to-head if you're climbing the ranks overall.
It does at the start of the season. The time when you can preserve your averages over the buys, and that's where head-to-head teams sort of fall from the wayside, and that's where you see the real men, the overall guys, step up and take the extra 1,000-point gain on those 1,000, 2,000-point gain on those other players when it comes to overall and head-to-head.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's something.
In saying that,
it's time to start planning.
Head-to-head play. Yeah, and that's next week's topic. We're going to talk
Yes.
about the buys next week.
Yes, it is. It is, absolutely.
Who listen to the podcast?
And you were saying something, the head-to-head players, you know, over those buy rounds, they do tend to switch off, don't they?
They switch off, they fall from the wayside. The overall guys get 1,000, 2,000 points. But in the last 8-9 weeks coming home, they pick up 1,000 points coming home with the stronger team with all the guns firing at the end of the season and trades in the pocket to burn.
Yeah, yeah, and that's going to be key, you know, like to keep myself consistent. I have burnt 2 trades each week, but I wasn't tending to burn 2 trades each week at the start of the season for the first 5 or 6 weeks as I tweaked the squad and got it to where I wanted it to be.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I've been using all my 2 trades the last few weeks. Next week I'll probably use the 2 trades for the last time, maybe even 1 trade, and then looking at maybe doing a trade, maybe no trades over the next few more weeks, maybe picking up a gun that's lowering, picking up another cash card that's popping up, and generally strengthening my squad in terms of depth of the buys and in terms of cash base so I can get guns in later on in the season.
Absolutely, and that's something we will discuss next week, is strengthening that squad in terms of the buys and trying to make the most of making a bit of cash over those buy rounds as well, so you can pick up the guns as they come back from the Origin campaign and sort of drop a little bit in price and a couple of them do tend to, while you'll at least have a little bit of extra cash over those buy rounds thanks to some smart buying. But Banksy, I think that's about all we've got time for this week. I think once again we've blown the time well and truly out of the water. Is there anything you want to add before we close up?
No, there isn't.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thanks for joining us. We hope this has been informative. We hope you weren't too confused with the rolling captain strategy. And best of luck with your dream team this week. We hope to see some fantastic scores, and hope the trade rage isn't sucking you in too badly just as yet. I'm Jay Moneyball Hellaby, and you've been here with myself and Nathan Banksy Banks, and we look forward to talking to you next time.
Goodbye.